everyone, and welcome back to the World Explorer podcast. This is the podcast where every week we take a random prompt and build an entire world around it. My name is Casey, and I'm joined with Isaac.
Hello there! So today we are world building a world that's been plagued by war. Again. One where the people of this world, in desperation and determination to survive, stay alive, have transferred their souls from their bodies into potentially either objects or other living creatures to carry with them. Meanwhile, they can still maneuver around their bodies. They still guide their bodies around, but they cannot be killed.
So can they be injured, and can they have legs and limbs chopped off and
Yes.
they just sew themselves back together, or could they just be a head that's just bouncing around?
That's something that we need to world build. Because losing limbs, I say yes. Can they sew themselves back together? Are they heads bouncing around? I don't know. Because the idea for this world is that these people are trying to not die so they can continue fighting. And so they've transferred their souls, which would be the one thing that actually makes them alive, into some other object or creature. But they still, navigate using their original bodies.
So can they do body transfers so they can jump between people's bodies? Or is they're still stuck with their only body, and once that body's gone, you just have a trapped soul until someone can fix up your body?
I was wondering about that.
So you suggested they could be trapped into animals or in objects. So is it like playing a video game in the sense that they're in this object and they can feel their presence there, but there's a screen and they're controlling the body outside of it?
I was thinking about that, and I thought that you can get a couple interesting scenarios from this. One that I was thinking about was you have a situation where they have transferred their soul, basically the one thing that keeps them alive, into another object, but then they hide it away somewhere, or they put it in a creature to run off somewhere. Put it in say a falcon and say, okay, fly to this distant land. And this way they are separated from it so that they stay safe. But if somebody were to go and catch that falcon or dig up the chest that has their soul in it, the person may not be there to protect it.
Mm.
In which case, I think you could get an interesting story where someone might be racing to go and, for lack of a better phrase, save his soul from whoever is trying to get to it first.
So, you haven't watched Harry Potter.
Oh, no.
But that is the entire plot of the last book, is trying to destroy the souls hidden in objects of the Dark Lord.
And he's trying to race them to it?
No, he's trying to stop them. He knows where all of his souls are, so he's just trying to stop them.
Okay. How many times have we made things similar or related to Harry Potter without me ever seeing it?
A lot.
How many of those have been my ideas versus your ideas?
Most of them have been yours, because I tend not to steal from the things that I've already read. But we do that all the time. We just come up with things, and then we're told by the other person, oh, by the way, it's like the show or TV thing.
Yeah, just recently we came up with the plot for Trolls.
I still can't believe that's the plot for Trolls.
Yep, that's the plot for Trolls. Just Trolls is a lot brighter colored than what we came up with.
Yeah, but back to the actual podcast. It's still interesting because this is a whole society doing it versus one person. So in Harry Potter, it's this dark, evil spell that kind of corrupts you to do it. You're not supposed to do it, and it weakens your souls. Well, this one, it's your entire soul being put inside of it, which I think is definitely different. You can't break it up into multiple pieces. Your entire soul gets committed to one object just so it's safe away from your body, which again, though, brings back that question, can you put it in a new body? Or can you take over an animal and put your soul into that and have complete control over that? Can you give up your body for a different one when that body can't be used anymore?
I think it mostly depends on what type of story we want to create. Because if because you could have what we were talking about before, where it's like a race to your soul to go and protect it from someone who's trying to destroy it, or you could have it be someone finds it, and it turns out it's tethered to a tiger that this person can then control and fight back with.
Mm.
It's just a matter of which do you want? Do you want the surprise final defense, or do you want the race to defend it?
No, what I'm more worried about is whether or not, I guess, if you separating your soul from your body is just actually giving them two targets they can kill. So, like, you either kill the body and then suddenly the soul's trapped in whatever, or you kill the soul and the body just becomes useless. So, this doesn't seem very useful currently unless the soul can be indeed transferred into another body or connect itself to something else that it can use that's living. Otherwise, you've just created two targets someone can go into, and you've made yourself weaker, not stronger.
I think it depends on how you're killing the opponent. So, for example, if you were to drop a bomb on the body, that would make you weaker. But if we're working in medieval times where they don't have the giant atomic bombs or anything, and you're more likely to die by a sword, and you were to get stabbed, you can just keep on walking. But the only way that you could really be taken out at that point is if somebody just chops off all your limbs, smashes in your skull with a hammer, just does a lot to you. That's the only way that they could really take out your body.
Which makes me think that there almost needs to be a regenerative process with the body. Like, if pieces can grow back and you can have your person back, as long as your soul's not attached to it. Or, again, that it can attach to a different soul. Otherwise, people are just gonna, dump lava on the soldiers or something, or just burn the whole place to make sure they don't come back. Like, once again, it just seems like you're making two targets when you were before just one.
And we're already working in a world that clearly has a magic system established, so they may have some sort of magical method of destroying the body. So in that
either
case, I would say it would be a creature that you could attach it to, and then if your body dies, your soul is then transferred to a creature.
And I think that there could be a dark spell or something you can do to retransfer yourself into another body. Maybe it has to be a willing body, so you have to go find a servant who's willing to die pretty much, so that way you can have their body. Or you could do it forcefully through dark magic too,
You could have a fun instance where it's two souls inhabiting the same body.
Like Ruby?
Like Ruby, except maybe in this instance it wouldn't be slowly killing the other soul or consuming the other soul.
Could be. It depends how dark it is.
Yeah, but that would be stealing from Ruby.
No, I think that's just a concept with so many layers and ideas and such great character development that I think it can still be original enough, despite the fact that clearly we were inspired by Ruby by thinking about it, but it's not, especially Ruby, that's a person who, there's that forceful element for this. Well, this would be a villain who would also be forcefully doing it, but maybe the other person would actually be aware that they're slowly dying. I don't know, the circumstances of Ruby is weird, where I'm not 100% sure he's slowly dying. All the hints suggest that he is.
Yeah, he is essentially dying in Ruby. Like,
and no one's addressing it.
He's more slowly being consumed and fused with someone else, where he's not exactly dying, but he is changing to a point where he might as well be dead.
Yeah. Ruby's really dark if you think about it too much.
It is. I mean, you don't need to think about it that much at all. It's just dark.
Well, I feel like that element is a lot darker than people aren't talking about that element enough, in my opinion. It gets brushed over a lot.
Anyway, back to the soul transfer thing. Back to the podcast. So, what do we want to go with? So,
there's just got to be a reason for them to transfer their soul over. So yeah, I think the idea that it maybe has to be transferred into either another person or another animal, and it lays dormant inside that animal or person until the other body is killed, in which case it like turns on and then they get possessed. And then they can do it again and again and again, and they can keep body hopping. So the goal is to find not only the person, in order to kill this person, you then have to not just find the person, you have to find the thing they binded their soul to and kill them both.
Yes. And actually, you could just kill the thing that they bound their soul to.
Well, then they could just bind their soul to something else.
Could they?
I don't know. Is the soul...
The way I was thinking that it would work is, so long as you've passed your soul on to a different container, essentially, then it doesn't matter if you killed the previous container. All that matters is you kill the one with the soul in it.
I guess that would be correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because the idea is the soul is the source of life.
Yeah.
And that's what's allowing the original body to keep going.
Yeah. It's just now you've made a weird long distance relationship with the body that can if the body shuts down, that's fine.
Yeah, you just take on a new body.
Yes. Which, means that people might be more willing to take on at being hosts if they assume the other person's not actually going to ever die.
Now you get some interesting bounty hunter scenarios.
Yeah, trying to figure out who's the people that this person's close to who might trust with their soul, trying to kill them.
So now I'm wondering, if you were to say have a world that's like plagued by war, and you've got two armies going up against each other, and they've tethered their souls to animals. Let's say like thousands of the bodies die, but the souls survive in animals. Do those animals then return with the original human souls to the kingdoms, and then transfer their souls again to other animals? And now you have armies of animals.
Is
going
that
and
what
fighting each
happened?
other?
Like these were just two things of people, but now I think that could happen. You just have a bunch of random animals that seem so human-like, and then you could have a third like little village that was out of the loop, and these people come to these towns and they get confused why they're all animals, and they tell the story of how they've transferred their souls and fought, and now they're just stuck in animal bodies.
So just to make things easier for like communication and stuff, are we gonna say that your ability for speech comes from your soul and not the body in this world? Because
yes.
yeah, I'm pretty sure tigers and elephants don't have human vocal cords.
I am as well, but I think for the sake of the story, we could say it comes from the soul, and that's an ability the soul gives.
We're just making all kinds of things up with souls.
Souls are interesting things that have a lot of potential both in this world and in imaginary ones.
Yes. Do we want to say that this is... We got to figure out how does one transfer a soul from one body to another, because we need to figure out, like, is this going to be available to everyone? Is this a military thing, kingdom thing? Is there some sort of magical stone that does it? Is there a spell?
No more stones.
Is it lightning that strikes from the sky? Do you have to be struck by lightning?
We've done that already.
Strike two creatures with lightning at the same time to cause the soul to move from one to the other.
I like the idea of something transferring it over to one to the other. I don't think it should be lightning.
Probably not.
Because lightning goes from sky to person and then sky to person. And I don't think that connection's the same.
The cloud is the middleman.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I just don't think that's just as clean as a transition as you would want to make sure that your soul gets to the other person in one piece.
I mean, have you ever heard of a broken soul?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that's what we're going for here.
Probably not.
That's another world building question we could address later, is the idea of failed transfers or messed up ones. But maybe first we should figure out how it actually works.
All right. So if we were to have a scenario where there's a kingdom that's out of the loop, that would be something that is sort of region based, where it's like this specific kingdom or set of kingdoms or towns or whatever have this ability, which means it would probably be one specific location, like say a magical lake or a giant rock that just cannot be moved.
I think there's also the idea we have to keep in mind is the fact that they're trying to transfer it to animals, and these animals are wild animals. So it has to be something where they could, I don't know, either they have to knock the animal out possibly, or you're working with animals, so it has to be something that makes that not impossible.
I imagine they probably either breed or trap animals for this process.
But I wouldn't want that. I would want like a proper wild animal that can hunt and knows what it's doing. But at the same time, that's so animals are so risky. Because imagine if you decide to do a tiger and then it just gets a disease and dies, and then suddenly you die. Like you could just drop dead randomly when and also animals have a less of a lifespan, a lot of these guys, than humans do. So not only are you doing that, you're sacrificing so many years of your life with the risk that you might die and more, which is why I think human to human transfer would be more popular. Because another story idea you could have is you could have the same people having lived for generations and generations because they have kids and they do the transfer, And then whenever they die of old age or whatever, they just take over their kids' bodies. And they've been doing it for so long they don't even like feel anything about the fact that they're snuffing out young life to keep their life going for century after century. And then if you have a kid that protests against this but stuck with their father's soul and wants to get it removed somehow, so that way they don't die when their dad dies, that's another interesting story.
Ooh. That is some heavy conflict.
Yeah. Like, I wanted the soul out, but it means killing my father. But also, if my father dies at any moment, I die because my father's soul will then take over. Or worse, or at one point, you finally have someone who had a kid, and at first they didn't care. They've had a bunch of kids, but there's something about this kid that's special to them. And then they have regret about putting their soul inside this child, and now they want to remove their soul and either put it back in themselves or even kill it just so they can give this child a chance. And now they're on a movement to convince everyone else to do the same, being like, hey, maybe they've messed up the world, because usually if you live longer, you've got longer time to mess things up. I don't know, but they're like, we need to give these younger generations a chance and we need to let go.
Yeah, this is where you would have to question if this is willing participation, because if it's unwilling, then and it's something that anybody can just do, then it's a lot of people going, and I imagine there's a lot of transfers constantly.
Yeah.
But if it's, or you would have to have some sort of government in place that's capturing them and forcing transfers.
Well, again, if it's the children, like maybe it has to be within the bloodline, like you can only do it to someone you're related to.
I don't know, because that to me removes a lot of possibilities with the whole animal thing.
Yeah.
And
you want animal
also,
transfers.
yeah, and also souls. I just don't.
You don't think
I
they're
can kind of see it working with the bloodline thing. But also, I just really like the idea of having an entire town of animals that were once humans who have now transferred their souls because they all went to fight in a war.
Yeah, I thought this is an interesting concept of being like a worldwide phenomenon that can happen. Because then you have these various towns with their conflicts. You have ones where it's been the same people running the town for centuries and centuries just because they kill off their children essentially so they can keep living. Or you have this animal-based town where they just jump between animal and they're raising their next bodies in very safe areas and they transfer their souls over to be careful. And then they can be as wild or and then they can be as wild and crazy and do adventurous things, or they could be war-hungry people, or animals, that go around murdering other things. But then, and then you could have other towns where it's considered like a very dark, evil magic and it's forbidden, but you have people who secretly do it, and then you have governments that are hunting down those people, and the punishment is both you and the soul gets killed. So whoever you transfer the soul to, both you get killed. So you have bounty hunters who are hunting for those who have had souls transferred into them for safekeeping.
I think this is where we, again, need to figure out how the souls are being transferred so we can figure out who all is doing this, and are there any restrictions, etc. So one of the ideas that I've thought of is just magical lake with magic water, maybe with some sort of god or goddess of the lake that people go to have this done.
But then it feels like she could say no. And I don't think we want that. I don't think we want some goddess coming in and saying no. Because then we have to world build her, and she'll have a lot of say in what happens and the impact. And I don't think she'd be happy with. I don't know how. I mean, I guess it depends on the goddess. Like, it could be a goddess who just doesn't care, or just wants sacrifices. So as long as you pay your due, you can transfer your soul. She doesn't care as long as she's being worshipped.
What if part of the cost of the transfer, like a sacrifice that you want, is say 1/8 of your soul, and so you can only transfer so many times before your soul belongs to her?
Yeah, and then I guess she just has soul servants.
And maybe after, as she slowly takes parts of your soul, maybe people begin to lose their humanity, and with each transfer into, say, an animal, they might take on more characteristics of that animal and become less human. Like the first transfer into an animal, they may be like fully human, except for the fact that they're in an animal's body.
Well, that would be interesting, because if she takes 1/8 of your soul and you transfer, that means that you're going to take on 1/8 of whatever you transfer soul.
Yes.
But that also means that people could still technically do it forever because it's just your soul is not going to be the same as when you start. When like 20 soul transfers down the line,
Oh no,
you're just
I was
like a different
talking
person.
like 1/8 of like say a pizza slice. There's 8 pizza slices total, and she's taking one full pizza slice each time.
Yes, but what happens if you get transferred in a soul and that you kill 7/8 of that soul, but the 1/8 that you didn't kill just gets inserted and you have a full pizza again?
Oh, you mean what happens when she fully takes the soul?
No, like what happens if you decide you transfer over? So she takes her 1/8, your 7/8 goes inside this bear. When you go into that bear, you destroy that bear's soul, except for 1/8 of the bear's soul, which then fuses in with your 7/8 to make a whole soul. So you're now 1/8 bear.
Yes.
Which means in that idea, you could just keep doing that. But now you're just a whole pizza again. Which means when she takes 1/8, she might be taking about like 1/20th of the bear and then whatever amount of yours. And then over time, you just mesh until you just lose yourself into all these different personalities.
Okay, so I was thinking it would be more like when you transfer the soul, it's like say let's say you had 7/8 of a pepperoni pizza transferred over to a pineapple pizza, and now 1/8 is a pineapple pizza. When you do the transfer again, you're only moving the pepperoni.
Okay.
So you're only moving the human parts the entire time.
So the bear part just dies.
The bear part just dies, or
But
the
now,
bear continues to roam. Maybe the bear.
well, I mean, the
maybe it's
bear's
more
dead
like,
already. Like that's what had to happen. The bear had to. You lose the body, so the 1/8 dies. So that means when you transfer over, you're losing 2/8. You then gain 2/8 of whatever you fuse into with.
Or because the bear still has that little bit left, the bear might be able to continue living on.
Well, no. The body's dead. Like you have to die in order
All right,
to.
because we don't necessarily have to die. You can just leap from one body to another, and the previous body can continue living on. Because that's the idea of going to war with your body.
But I also thought it was you only fully fuse with the soul transfer once the old body dies. So so what happens is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that means that currently there's 7/8 of a person living in that bear, and there's a full bear in there. And the full bear is kind of in control, just holding onto your soul for you.
Yes.
Which is why it's the danger of having a wild animal do it. But then suddenly that person dies in war, and then your soul takes full control except for 1/8 of the bear, and now you're 7/8, and now you're fully in control of the bear.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much that you don't take control of that 1/8 of the bear. It's more you become that 1/8 of the bear.
Yeah.
You become 1/8 bear, 7/8 human.
Yes.
And every time you transfer, like if you go from bear to wolf, you suddenly become 1/4 wolf, but 3/4 human. Then you go to bird, and you're now 3/8 bird, and so on. Just keeps.
Until eventually
you're
not
transfer between each other. It's only
that makes more sense.
Yeah. And then if you become, say, only 1/8 human and 7/8 animal, at that point, there would be such little humanity left that you would probably not even be able to speak at that point.
And at that point, I feel like when she die, she can just come and collect that last 1/8 of the soul.
Yeah, like at that point, you might have lost so much humanity that the average person can't even tell whether or not you are partially human within that animal, and then might just hunt you.
Yeah, which would make it just an interesting. It's also a very fascinating dynamic for human to human transfer. Because now you could have your father's soul, but if your father has bounced around as now only 1/8, you just have 1/8 of it. So technically, you're more you than your dad at that point still, because you have more of your soul left. But now you have just like a part of your dad with you. You just take on a few of his characteristics, but at the end, you're still mostly you. Okay, so you have a person who has won out in the gamble. So like the father took over the son, but he only had, let's say, 2/8 of himself take over the son. So you're still majority the son with just a little bit of your father in you. Now that person, the son, wants to go and transfer his soul over. The question is, does he have a full soul, or because the father took over 2 pieces of it, can he only give away whatever that math, the last little bit of his soul. He already just forfeited 2 pieces of his soul so he could keep his father's soul.
So I'm thinking that maybe when you transfer a soul to another body that already has a soul, then the original soul possibly does not leave the body. It's just that whatever fraction that you needed to take over, it's still there. It's just sort of moved out of the way and loses all control. It's dormant.
Okay.
So if you say take over half of a bear's soul or half of your son's soul or whatever, you're have half and half perfectly. But then as soon as the person who came in leaves and goes to a different body, the original half of the body comes back. The dormant half now returns and becomes a whole soul again.
So this makes it seem like for your original body, you maintained control of that body despite the fact your soul was out of it. But that seems to suggest that if you were to transfer souls a second time, it's a full transfer. You just leave. You don't get to keep control of the body you were originally in because their soul then gets to take back over, which I think kind of kills a lot of the conflict. Because now suddenly a child saying, yeah, my dad can possess me for a while if he dies in war, because I know the first thing he'll do is go transfer himself into maybe like a dead body that's still well preserved, that doesn't have a soul anymore, that he has full control of, and then I'll be okay again and I'll come back. And that's like all the conflict of taking on the possession just gone. Because, like, wouldn't you be willing to say, you know what, my dad can have my body for 3 months if it means I get to keep my dad for many, many years afterwards without any real harm done to me? Like, if you love someone enough, that's not that big of a sacrifice. Compared to, I'm willing to take on your soul knowing if you die, I'm going to die so you can keep living. That's a big sacrifice.
Yeah, okay, so perhaps it's better to make it so it actually destroys the soul of the one
Yeah,
you're taking
I think
over.
it might have to. And it means when your soul transfers out, you still have control of that part of the body. So it goes dormant somewhere else and it's still controlling this body. Like, that just continues on.
Okay. Yeah, we can go with that.
Just because suddenly it just becomes like you lose 3 months of your life versus you're making the biggest sacrifice because you care about someone, or you're being forced to make a huge sacrifice against your will.
Yeah. But now I feel like we should establish this goddess that you're giving an eighth of your soul to. Like, what does she do with the souls once you've given your whole soul to her? Because what I'm thinking is maybe part of the deal is like if you die, even if you still have like say half your soul left, if that soul is killed or gotten rid of, or like the body that it's inhabiting is killed, she gets the whole soul. That's part of the deal. So
even if you give away 1/8, what you really are is saying, when eventually I die, you get all of it.
Yes. What does she do with these souls?
I don't know. It's got to be something she's kind of keeping under the wraps. Because if it's I mean, it depends. She's got to be a horrible goddess, right? Like, she's got to be a master evil villain. Like,
yeah. Like, is she saving them for? Like, is she sending them to some sort of afterlife, an underworld? Is she
building up her own army to take over the entire world?
Is there like some sort of spiritual realm where there is some sort of war happening that she says, okay, once you're done in this world, you're going to go and fight for me?
Because that just adds on to
That's like that's 2 worlds in one we got to build now.
I know, it feels like we're starting this really epic, like 20-season series, starting with this one person who's... we're building a Doctor Who series. There's one person who transfers from life to life to life, and then he finally dies, right? Last soul's gone. Everyone's like, we're 10 seasons in. We're done. He's dead. And then suddenly the goddess reappears and takes him to the afterlife. And now he has this other epic battle thing he could do. And we're like, and we've got another 5 seasons to go, people. You'll never leave us. That's what I feel like we're making right now.
And this is where you can suddenly introduce 10 other gods that are like, yes, we'll take your soul when you're done over here, and we'll send you over to this place. And then you got the one where it's just like, oh, well, now you're in a battle where your soul could be completely destroyed. Waha, big risks where you could actually die this time. But no, not really, because there's some sort of weird magic that'll fix it. And this series will never end.
This is what this feels like. I feel like we're just making the next Doctor Who, but fantasy. I hated that last step. The Doctor who was like the final Doctor and supposed to die and then came back that was the day I quit watching Doctor Who. I feel like that would be me in this series. I'd watch, his soul's been split a bunch, and suddenly he gets transferred into the afterlife, and I'm like, okay, guys. I don't know. I guess if you make it intriguing, the idea though of being like transferred into a ghost army, but you're still conscious of it, and suddenly you have like all your soul back. So you've been slowly turning more into either an animal or being mixed with people, and like having these weird dynamics. Like each person is less and less you and more the other character, but suddenly you're now back to season 1 person in the afterlife.
Yeah.
Which I think is.
But the season 1 person has all the experiences of all those different versions of himself, where I would say that even though you're only taking the 8th that was human, that 8th could still be
retain its
affected by
memories.
retain the memories, which can have an effect on like the psyche and the the personality of the human. So because because lived experiences will change a person, including that 1/8 of the soul that he has left. And so that it could mean that you don't end up with season 1 person. You end up with a
very confused season 8 person who feels like you have season 1 who just watched season 2 through 8 on TV and is now just confused.
Yeah, I think he's at this point.
You still get like a different version of the same character each season, depending also who he transfers over to, which I think is. And if you throw an animal there for like, say that's like the shortest season, like for 1 season he was a bear for one of his lives or something, and then he still has like the bear aspect of him.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Like I feel like the bear aspect of him would probably be, I don't know, craving for berries maybe.
Fish.
For fish.
I think you can learn a lot from a bear and like a bear fat. Like you've seen Brother Bear.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what sort of characteristics would a human take on from the bears?
I mean, he also still has his memories of being a bear and what it means to be a bear, and we could have like a whole Kingdom of the Forest dynamic and how maybe he learned to communicate with animals a bit better, and now he could talk to bears. Maybe he can talk to bears.
I don't think he could talk to bears, but he can maybe understand.
He understands bears. Yeah.
Bears.
Yeah.
Like. Yeah, he can, read their body language and all that.
Yeah.
And
takes spirit animal to a new level.
Yes. That's essentially more what happens.
Yeah. So this kind of suggests, though, that this isn't as common as a thing. I mean, if you want this storyline, it shouldn't be as common. Like, this is, I don't know, a goddess going around looking for the perfect warriors that she gets to live forever. Like, she's toning an army now. She doesn't want just any person in her army. She wants true warriors who are going to pick people who are going to make them even better warriors, or animals that will make them even better warriors each stage. So when the person has gone through their 8 lives and is now fully her soldier, she has like a fully an 8-lived person who has all these experiences and training montages and life experiences, who's forced to fight for her. She's not building an army, she's building up an elite soul force.
Yeah, she's like literally everyone in her army at that point would just be the strongest warriors imaginable.
Which is a really cool, like, you follow this season and then all of a sudden you've got this guy who's put in with like 20, like, I don't know, we could keep it small, say he's like the 6th member she's taken over. Like, she kind of dedicates herself to 1 or 2 people along the way. She might have like, she won't have many. And then you now have this elite task force who's being tasked by this goddess that he's been serving on Earth and now is serving in the afterlife to take out a god or something like that. And now you have that as your season. But then, there's soul trades going around in the afterlife as well, and trying to figure that out, where he's realizing he comes across, like, say, the first person he took over, who he took over the majority of, only kept like 1/8 of them. He comes across their full soul here and then realizes, like, that could be a very psychologically damaging thing if you come across the person who you murdered to stay alive in the afterlife. This is a cool TV show. I'm actually getting really excited about the idea.
I actually do really like this idea. I feel like this could be easily done really, really wrong, though, which is what would concern me about this.
Yeah.
It could go the route of Doctor Who.
Which would make me want to rage quit. But I think, though, if you set it up right, and maybe if you keep it like 1 season per body, or maybe even 2, like the animal, like you have 2 animals in like 1 season just for the funsies of it.
Yeah.
So like by season 8, you're in the afterlife part already, and then they defeat the god, and somehow, some way, this character has to find eternal rest, and the series can end.
So I feel like at this point, we would need to start world building the afterlife, this goddess, who she's fighting, what is her plan with this massive army. It's this
not an
a
army anymore,
world
we've agreed
we want
it's
to continue next week,
Oh,
and we can now world build the afterlife.
I would be up for that. Yeah,
Yeah,
make it
because
a
we
two
are
party.
running out of time to world build the world. We've already done like the whole overworld thing with all the soul transfers. We've got that all established. Now we have to world build this afterlife, and the goddess and any other gods that may be showing up.
And the elite task force that he's joining
Yes,
along.
and who it is that she's fighting.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of this ridiculously powerful army?
That she's willing to dedicate 8 lifetimes just to get one person for.
Depends on the length of life of the
That's
things that they're
true.
inhabiting. It could be that they all inhabited insects and they did not last long.
I doubt that.
It would be like an emergency transfer at that point, as you had no other creatures nearby. Beetle.
Honestly, though, that'd be funny.
That could be like one of the main characters. If you need to shorten it a season and you need the main character to
Waste
live
a life,
waste
yeah.
a life. It's like Beetle.
Yes.
And then he goes and finds.
And then the
something
goddess
stronger.
probably comes to him and be like, seriously?
Yes, the goddess
Seriously?
is just like, what are you doing?
This is not. Now you have like a snarky goddess who gets to follow around this companion and like guide him on his journey and training and stuff, and like suggest people for him to take over and give and stuff like that.
Well, is this a goddess that can be in more than one place at once? Because she's going to be going to a lot of different warriors.
It depends how many she's like cooking up.
I imagine there's a lot that she'd be cooking up, because you're talking about a big army here.
I don't know if
and-
she is going for a big army or if like elite task force is more of her goal.
Well, I think the idea is that everyone in her army would be elite. And that's
Yeah.
why she's going around selecting the best warriors, people who want to be warriors and would choose the strongest animals to transfer into.
That's true.
And so I think she would not be spending that much time with this person
But she
individually.
would be
Every
able
once in a
to
while she might
pop
show up.
in.
Yeah, every once in a
Yeah.
while she might pop in.
Because
But
she
she's
wants to make
spending-
sure he's doing what she needs him to. Like if he
Yeah.
comes in and he's just lounging around on the beach enjoying life number 5, she's gonna be like, no, this is not what no, go work out, go learn skills and stuff. Like don't waste.
Yeah. But most of the time she's going to either be seeking out new warriors or managing her army in the afterlife.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like.
Yes.
Which we will world build next week.
Sounds good. So we're gonna end it here then.
Yes, we are.
All right, then I guess we will say goodbye, and we'll be back next week where we'll get to world build some gods.
Goodbye.
Bye.